Mr. Birdie, members of the board, we do have one item for board discussion this evening. At this time, I'll turn it over to Mr. Martin.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. I have 5 policies for you to consider and discuss this evening. I'll be presenting 4 of those, and Mrs. Lane will present one of those. Policy BF is a board policy or board policy development and adoption. This policy was a 1995 policy, and the language was so out of date that we're just replacing all of the language with the new language. Many of the things we were already doing, but now it's in board policy. It spells out things like policy will be clearly signified in the notes of our board meetings when it's adopted, that the process of presenting policies 1 month or 1 meeting and then adopting them at the next meeting to give you time for research in between if you so desire is also outlined there. It clarifies the date when new policies become effective. We've also added quite a few cross-references and slightly changed one of the legal references. Those are the changes for policy BF. Are there any questions on that? All right, the next policy is policy CCB. It's staff relations and lines of authority. The policy itself, even though it was last adopted in '95, the language is still solid, so that's great. The titles changed to better describe to the public what is involved in the policy, and then the cross-references have been updated. Any questions about CCB? Policy CE, administrative councils, cabinets, and committees. It's being changed. There's not a lot of great change there, but councils and cabinets have been added in addition to committees just because various school districts use the terms almost interchangeably. It's just according to what you want to call a group of people who are coming together to help out. I do want to point out that these councils, cabinets, and committees that this policy deals with are committees that are called by the superintendent, as opposed to committees that are called by the board. We have a separate policy for board committees, and board committees operate under the Open Meetings Act and the Sunshine Law. So if the board conducts or calls together a committee, they have to operate under that. But the committees that a superintendent brings up or appoints, they're not required to operate under the same laws. So that's the basic change there, and also the cross-references are being updated. Any questions concerning CE? All right, the final policy that I'm bringing to your attention tonight is policy EGAA. And this is our copyright policy. The language has just been updated. This was a policy from 1996. The basic policy is staying intact. They've included the word federal to show that this is a federal law and federal guidelines. That's been included in the policy several times. They've taken out the actual legal reference that was in the body of the policy, and it's now listed under the legal references at the bottom. Then the language has just been updated. Cross-references have been added along with legal references. Any questions regarding? There is an entire regulation that goes along with this as well. It's still in good shape. I don't think we're going to have to make any changes to it, but it's an 8-page document, so it goes into great detail about what we need to do regarding copyrights. Any questions about this policy?
Thanks, Mr. Martin.
Thank you.
Ms. Lane?
Thank you, Mr. Birding. I have, once again, presenting changes to policy DECA. This policy was first adopted September 7th of 17, and this will be the 3rd revision that we've had in a little more than 2 years. So I think they're just trying to get everything covered. The couple of changes that happened, the first one is under procurement, and we added, OSBA suggested that we add that the district performs a cost and price analysis for every procurement over the established simplified acquisition threshold. Federal procurement amounts are actually higher than our board policy amounts are for purchasing. So our policy states if a good is $2,500 or more, we must have 2 quotes for that. Federal procurement guidelines say they would consider that a micro purchase, but it would be $10,000 or more. So we actually are doing more than what the federal procurement guidelines that are established, that aren't actually spelled out in here, but that we actually do more than what the guidelines state. So I wanted to let the board know that we go above and beyond for that. So the other change in that same section is regarding affirmative steps to assure that minority businesses and women's business enterprises and labor surplus area firms are used when possible. If we're not actually aware of that happening at this point, but there's nothing in our guidelines that would say that we would not consider doing this. So I guess if we are aware that it's a minority business or a women's business enterprise, yes, we would take that into consideration, just like we would anybody else that qualifies for that service. And the last change, I believe, or one of the last changes in that policy is under Section 4, conflict of interest, and that just speaks to employees, board members, and agents of the district not taking any type of gratuities or favors to award contractors a federal grant or an award, which for some of us, that would be a very terrible ethics violation, and we'd have a lot more questions to answer from some higher-ups, but that, I can assure you, is not happening under my watch. So, thank you. Any questions on that?
Questions for Mrs. Lane?
I'm sure I'll be back within a year to revise
Yeah.
this again. For
Right.
now, this is what we have.
Thank you.
Thank you.